Very true.
So, this is a tough slot. The 1 o'clock slot's tough after lunch because everybody's kind of zombified, so hopefully we can bring you back out of it. Also, in the morning panels, I don't know what it was like across the hall, but over here, I think the biggest takeaway that everyone brought from the room was don't study Japanese, study something else. And I'm here to tell you that that's not entirely true. It was actually really good news. You can study Japanese, and you are free to study something that drives your passion, something that drives your creativity. We're not asking you to do a double major. I didn't double major in anything. I have a degree in Japanese language. Full disclosure, I haven't spoken Japanese in over 6 months. And I text my friends on, every now and then on Instagram, leaving comments and stuff in Japanese. But by and large, I don't use it. But to this day, it's been the most valuable thing I've ever done, was study it for God knows how long. So today I wanted to talk to you about different ways you can use Japanese in the future in conjunction with something else, how to apply an understanding of Japanese culture to your workplace, whether it's a Japanese company or otherwise. And then more generally, I'd like to speak to the opportunities that learning Japanese can open doors for you in the world, and that really pertains more to my direct experience, I would have to say. And I don't have anything up here, so you'll just have to imagine all this sick stuff happening behind me. So anyway, before I get into that, how many people here know how to ride a bicycle? Good. How many people here know how to scuba dive? Yes. Awesome. That's great. So over the course of the next few minutes, I'll probably be making some ridiculous comparisons to those two things, and metaphorically speaking. And if I get really off the chart, it's because I flew into Columbus this morning at 4, and I'm just running on fumes right now, so forgive me. But anyway, language is a lot like scuba diving. It's a lot like cycling because to a great extent, a lot of the same metaphors apply. You get something wrong, you injure your pride, you fall down, you get back up, you try again. But more importantly, you get good enough at language, you get good enough at cycling or diving, and they never really go away. It's like language is to a lesser degree like riding a bike, and something that you could not do for a really long time, and as I found this morning, I still remember how to say a few things when Dr. Kalmar greeted me, so that was a relief. So a little bit about me. I do have a degree in Japanese. At the University of Finley, I spent a total of 4 years in Japan, 1 year doing an internship, another month or so as part of the Kake Bridge program. That was a blast. And then I had a full-time position at the Educational Institute as sort of a travel cultural liaison, where sort of in the off-season, being spring and summer, I was sort of a travel guide for the students coming over to Japan. And then in the wintertime, I worked with the local schools. Teaching and helping the staff with various English duties. So, number of roles, very, very cool stuff. All of those experiences I had in Japan were really a direct result of what I did at the University of Finley, connections. So, I never showed up at Narita International with a suitcase full of dreams and a skateboard on my back. I had a plan going into it, and my plan, I love this quote by Mike Tyson. He says, everybody has a plan until you get punched in the face. And it's so true, because I did sort of have a plan, and my plan was I was going to study Japanese. And when you study something, the assumption is that you take your studies and you apply them to something. Basically, you have a hammer and you hit one blunt object to another object. And that was how I planned on using my Japanese. I was just going to translate. I was going to interpret. I was going to physically use the degree. If you get a degree in engineering, you put it towards use in engineering, so on and so forth. So that was kind of my goal, and then I got punched in the face. Not literally, but so what I realized while I was there, and I'll get to that in a few moments, was that Japanese was a tool in a quiver, and not so much the hammer that I thought it was. And so I'll get to that in just a moment. So now, as Mark said, I work at a rad little startup in San Francisco called Huckberry. So we sell guys stuff, and we sort of run a journal. So it's kind of like Men's Journal meets Zappos. Sort of, we live in this sort of weird niche, but it is very cool. My primary role is I manage a team of copywriters who write for our journal, write product copy for the website. And then I run our social media channels. We have around 300,000 followers across a number of different channels. And then I send our weekly sales emails to 500,000 inboxes. And we like to call it the best damn email that these 500,000 people receive. And I would like to think that the experiences that I had in Japan directly parlayed into more of a creative role here at Huckberry. I feel like I've kind of arrived at this sort of creative apex that I'm really proud of. So to go back to Japan, to go back to the bicycle, all of those things started, so this was in my Okayama experience. I was with the Kake program. I was probably 3 or 4 months in. I'd shaken off all the jet lag. My weight had normalized. I wasn't constipated anymore. I was eating properly and kind of going out and doing things. And I remember riding home late one night after a particularly hard bender. I was kind of riding my wobbly mamachari down the side of the road, and I saw on an overpass kind of in the distance a group of blinking white and red lights sort of blinking really fast and seeing the fast. It was a whole pack, and it was a group of riders, and they were like rocketing over this overpass. And it's like 3 in the morning, and it was this really cool sort of poetic thing that I was witnessing in this sort of drunken haze of this group of lights on this bridge. And there was an amazing degree of freedom that I could just see in the lights, and in that moment I was on my crappy bike and these guys were just like flying in the air. And there's one thing really cool about bicycles and about language, in that once you learn to ride a bike as a child, that sense of freedom that you get really never goes away. Even when you start riding as an adult, you still get that same sort of euphoric rush and the same freedom. And I'd like to think of language in sort of the same way. And once you learn a language and you get entrenched in it and you start to use it, it opens up the world, and your level of access to other people and communication channels expands in sort of the same way that the bicycle allows you to ride further down the road than before. So it was another sense of freedom that I saw were starting to align. So I could speak Japanese. I saw these guys on these bikes, and I had this epiphany. So I bought a better bike. I found out who they were. I started riding with them. I got deeper and deeper entrenched with this group of guys. And again, this was after 3 or 4 months of kind of having done the white guy in Japan routine. I went to the foreign gaijin bars. I did the expat thing, and I was kind of over it. And really looking for like the next, a deeper level of communication. I really wanted to get better connected with Japan than I had to that point. Otherwise, I didn't see the point of being there. And the bicycle sort of granted that outlet where I was able to get in with this group of guys in sort of this weird Hunter S. Thompson reality, where this is like this outlaw biker gang. Literally not that romantic, but in the same sense that they were kind of just like screwing around late at night because they didn't want to get harassed by the cops because they were doing wheelies in the park. You know, it was that sort of level of, you know, frivolity. And but it was really amazing because also to the degree of using language to get entrenched in a culture, I feel like there's really no better way than to find the people on their turf, on their terms, not because I was like a white guy in a foreign bar where people came to learn to practice English. I was like on their turf, learning to ride wheelies on their stairs, and so on and so forth. And it was really, really, really very cool. And what it ended up turning into is I started taking photographs of the guys, like, you know, so we could share pictures, because it was another really cool way, because when my language could only get me so far, you can only communicate emotionally, even with a full degree and, you know, 6 months of immersion or whatever. You can only get so far in communicating with somebody before there's kind of a gap where, you know, you're having long emotional discussions about the universe, or you're just being like, hey, let's go drink some beers and do some wheelies in the park. And so we started using photographs to stay connected and share with each other, and I got really hooked on photography, videography, editing things. You know, and then I was writing captions for these photographs, and then after a year I realized I basically had a book of all my buddies, all these guys that I'd gotten to know really, really well. I had photographs of all of us writing, and very quickly I realized that I had something more powerful than Japanese at my disposal. I'd completely unlocked another side of this. I hate to call myself creative, because I'm not, but like it was a side that really got me stoked, because it was not language, it wasn't what I was planning on doing, it wasn't, you know, taking my degree and hitting the world with it like a hammer. I found a completely new outlet, which was really